It turns out that I was born with a defective heart. And somehow I managed to make it to 70 years old before finding that out. There were moments along the way when doctors would put down their stethoscopes and look up at me and say somberly, "You know you have a murmur, right?" And I would say, "So I'm told." And that would be that, because as a red-blooded, card-carrying American male, I make it my business not to know anything that's going on with my anatomy. So I wouldn't ask any questions. And I went along that way for quite a while, until 2 years ago, my cardiologist raised an alarm and said, "You know, you're looking at open heart surgery within 5 years at least, and maybe as soon as 2 years." And I looked at him and said, "Well, what if I don't want to endure that ordeal?" And he said, "Well, then your valve will blow, and that will be that for you." Okay, then. So that's how it turned out that on September 22nd, I was lying on a bed at HUP, Hospital of University of Pennsylvania, on my back, having the front of my body shaved from my ankles up to my neck, as my worried wife and daughter held my hand and then kissed me as I was rolled on a gurney down a very brightly lit, sunlit hallway, corridor in the beautiful new Pavilion building down on 34th Street. And then I made a sharp right turn and became the temporary guest of honor in a gleaming new surgical suite. And at that point, I had the thought, well, that may be the last time I ever see sunlight. But I had that thought very calmly, because I actually wasn't that worried, because my doctor, if you Google him, Dr. Dinesh Desai, is probably the best person in North America and maybe the world for doing the procedure I was having, an aortic valve replacement. See, my problem was the aortic valve. They're supposed to have 3 flaps. Mine only had 2. And that meant that as I got old and my arteries started to collect calcium the way my grandson collects Legos, the valve was becoming stiff and clogged and pretty dubious. So I needed to have a new one. So what they were going to do is slice my chest open, crack my sternum to give the surgeon a good look at the heart, and then lift my heart up a little bit into what's called a cradle. Now that's a very ironical name for this thing, because this is the part of the procedure that can kill you. There's about a 5% fatality rate on this. Then they put me on a heart-lung machine. My heart is stilled, and the surgeon puts the new valve with the cow skin in. Like I said, he does it so often that it's almost like a spark plug replacement for an auto mechanic. And in this case, I was only on the heart-lung machine because he did his work in 52 minutes, which is actually less time than the very fine mechanics at Conocelli Honda take to put spark plugs into my CRV. So that was pretty impressive. Now, as I said, I wasn't all that worried about what Dr. Desai was going to do, because I had tremendous faith in him. No, my anxiety, the anxiety that haunted my nights so that I would wake up at 4 a.m. filled with dread, was about the moment when I would wake up in the ICU. You see, I have very severe claustrophobia. In fact, when I do this and try to pull a sweater off over my head and my head gets stuck, I have a panic attack. So that's how bad it is. So the idea of waking up in the ICU with a mask over my nose and my face and a tube down my throat was absolutely terrifying to me. So I shared my flop sweat panic with Dr. Desai before the procedure, and he looked at me with a mixture of pity and humor, and treating me like a mom giving her toddler a whoopee. He looked at me and said, "We'll pull you out of anesthesia so slowly that you'll barely know what's happening. And by the time you're awake enough to know anything, you won't remember the bad stuff. And that'll be the moment when you wake up, we'll pull the tube out. So that was very comforting to me. And then right before the procedure, a very funny and chatty anesthesiologist. Imagine that. Have you ever had a chatty anesthesiologist? I thought they got into the business because they didn't want to talk to human beings. But this guy was like Stephen Colbert. He wouldn't leave the room. And he assured me that he knew what I wanted and that he'd take care of me. He did. He's in my will. We're all good. But so I woke up, and the tube was down my throat, but there was nothing else over my face. And I said the thing that I practiced saying, telling myself that I would say. I said, dude, there's a tube down your throat, but you're alive and breathing. Take the wind and say a prayer to your merciful God. So that's what I did, and I was absolutely calm and filled with a kind of peace. And I looked up at my wife and my daughter standing on either side, and they were nearly in tears. What had happened was, I didn't remember this, but I sort of partially woke up, and I'd had a complete panic attack, and I was thrashing around. And they were already upset enough. They were looking at me. I was bloated with fluids. I was half blue. I had enough wires and tubes coming out of me that I looked like Aquaman. And now they were looking at me sort of, they thought, living out my worst nightmare before their eyes. So I knew they were upset, so I wanted to calm them down. So I thought, here's what I'll do. I'll do 2 thumbs up. Except apparently I did the gesture so spastically that they thought it was another panic attack. And somebody said, oh, there he goes again. And my daughter said, it's okay, Dad, we're here. Calm down. It's okay, we're here. And that got me a little pissed off because they thought, here I am, I'm saying prayers to the Lord, I'm really calm, and they think I'm panicking. This is insulting. So I thought, what can I do now? And then I had a brilliant idea. I want to explain that I have a very, close and warm relationship with my daughter. So I looked up at her and sort of grimaced around the tube in, a form of a smile, and I gave her the finger. And then I turned to my wife and I gave her the finger. And my daughter said, oh, he's okay, he's giving us the finger. And then I sort of did the gesture that I wanted a writing implement. They put a pen and pencil in my hand, and I tried as best I could to write, I love you, on a sheet of paper and gave it to my wife. And then they finally got the idea, and we were all good. So then I ended up spending 6 days in the pavilion, which, you've never been there, has the appointments of a 4-star hotel. I really urge you to have open heart surgery just so you can experience this. But I want to talk about the nurses on the cardiac floor. And I have to tell you, the nurses and the therapists on that floor and in the ICU, as far as I'm concerned, rank as some of the finest human beings on the planet. I want to name check a couple of them, Jake, Nikki, Vicky, and Lucy. I'll never forget the experience of being able actually to spend a lot of time with them, getting to know them, while they poked me, prodded me, irrigated me, and manhandled me in all kinds of very gentle but memorable ways. They are some of the finest people I've ever met. I just want to say, nurses are the best. They deserve praise, and they deserve a raise stat. So, that was 8 weeks ago, so you can see that I'm recovering pretty well. The Visiting Nurses Association of Philadelphia, another very fine organization, fired me as their patient because they said there was no point in showing up at our house anymore because Eileen, my wife, was doing such a fabulous job of taking care of me. I had to spend a month very grimly, like that toddler, sitting in the middle of the back seat of the car when we went in there, clutching my little red PenMed heart pillow to my chest, because it turns out that your sternum doesn't like it when an airbag explodes on it. But that's done now, and I can drive again. So mostly, I want to say that, and this is true for all of us, we are incredibly lucky to live in the city of Philadelphia because there's no better city to get sick in. No matter what ails you, there's somebody here who's world-class at fixing it. And I feel unbelievably lucky to have been treated at Penn Med by those wonderful people. I can't say that I'm necessarily a better person for having gone through this, but I do feel, just to tie it into the theme, that I am a little braver now, a little less anxious, because my heart was stopped for 52 freaking minutes, and I'm still alive. So everything right now is gravy, and I try not to let little annoyances and little setbacks bother me. I even try not to get angry when some Philadelphian honks at me the nanosecond the light changes. What is it with you people? So I realize that I'm incredibly lucky. I've been very well loved. I've been very well cared for. So my job now is to pay it back in any way I can through service and love to other people. And so that's the way I hope to be braver going forward.